What's going on, you?
Good
How you
to
doing?
see you, my friend. Max is on the road.
Hold on. I have breaking news.
What?
I have breaking news.
What?
I'm at the game in Philadelphia
Yeah?
last night watching them get set to close out. And it wasn't just Meek Mill that showed up in the house.
Who?
It was Max Kellerman. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Max, you were there?
Kellerman rolled up in the house at the Wells Fargo Center last night. I was very pleased. I was very pleased.
Well, I am in Philadelphia to shoot some more scenes for Creed 2. I have to mention that. That's in fact why I'm here.
Nothing wrong with that.
If the Sixers are,
You guys are so big time.
Well, look, if the Sixers are, I'm playing incidentally a dashing and brilliant sports commentator named Max
so
Kellerman.
you're not acting, yeah.
But the point is that if you have a chance to see Embiid and Simmons close out their first playoff series, you got to go and watch it. These guys, as Stephen A. says, are special.
Well, I will say this. That's something that he could have saved for the opening segment that we're going to touch. You understand what I'm saying? But he had to try to jump the gun. What I'd like to say is this. Max Kellerman being in Philadelphia, he's in a movie with one of my favorite dudes in Hollywood right now, Michael B. Jordan. It's a special brother.
A lot of star power at the Wells Fargo Center.
That's
How
right.
about it? I'm just lucky I get to hang out with you guys sometimes. All right. Also today on First Take, Saints running back Alvin Kamara joins the show. We'll find out if he was salty about dropping to the third round of the draft after being the best rookie running back in football last season. But let's talk about it, guys. What a time to be a Philly sports fan. Nova, the Eagles, and now the Sixers. And Meek Mill had a front row seat to see all of it. This is their first conference semifinals appearance since 2012. And now they'll face the winner of the Celtics Bucks. Stephen A. Smith, are the Sixers the best team in the East?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are right now. That might be by default, but nevertheless, it is reality. Last night was somewhat surreal. It was an incredible environment for me personally to be a guy that worked for the Philadelphia Inquirer for 17 years and ended my career there as a columnist for the last 10 years, and seeing what I've seen from the city, still starving for a Super Bowl championship, still starving for so many different things, and to watch the Eagles win the Super Bowl this year, then Villanova win another national championship, its second in the last 3 years. That didn't happen during my 17-year career. Villanova hadn't won a national championship in that time. That was back in the day with Raleigh Massimino in the 80s, and Philadelphia 76ers hadn't been to an NBA Finals since 2001, hadn't won one since 2003, since 1983 rather, and the Philadelphia Eagles had never won a Super Bowl championship. So you see what's going on, and it's beautiful to watch. Then you go into Wells Fargo Center last night, and it's packed to capacity. There isn't an empty seat in the house. The crowd is buzzing, and then you learn the news that Meek Mill was let out of prison after Mr. Kraft and Mr. Rubin, ultimately visited him at the state penitentiary.
Everyone just went nuts, huh?
They said that Rubin sent a helicopter. They went there, got him out, heliported him back to the city of Philadelphia, where ultimately he ended up showing up in attendance. Kevin Hart was in the house along with a few others. It was just a surreal environment, and then they went on the court and they handled their business. Now, that was assisted in part by Miami Heat's team that, as far as I'm concerned, didn't show up offensively. Hassan Whiteside was an absolute embarrassment in terms of his effort, in terms of wanting the basketball, in terms of his productivity. Joel Embiid, as far as I'm concerned, was playing against a no man as opposed to a big man. That was a problem. D-Wade had an off night in which I believe will be his final game. And then you look at the Philadelphia 76ers in terms of J.J. Redick shooting the basketball, Ben Simmons running the show, Joel Embiid putting up a double-double. And what I see is a Philadelphia 76ers team that has size, that has athleticism, that has length, that has depth. They can shoot from the perimeter, and more importantly, they want to defend. You take J.J. Redick off the court, they can literally put 5 guys out there, 6'6" and above, 4 of whom can shoot, and Ben Simmons is running the show. So it's something special, and I'm not just saying it because a few 76ers who will not be named at this particular moment in time surrounded me and cornered me and was ready to beat me up because I told them that Ben Simmons is not my rookie of the year. I
picked them to go to the finals. That's not enough.
I felt intimidated, Max. I felt intimidated. They kind of scared me. You understand? They kind of scared me before the game, but it's all love.
Well, look, today is a day where it's easy to say the Sixers are the best there are in the East. But I am staying with the Toronto Raptors. And this flies in the face of history, I realize. The team with the special players, particularly in the playoff, and both of the special players between the Raptors and the Sixers, if it comes down to that, the special players are both on the Sixers. The Sixers are also deep. But I think that Toronto, like there is a difference between playoff basketball and regular season basketball. But all during the regular season, the Raptors were the best team in the East for much of it. Top 5 offense, top 5 defense. An excellent player who seemed to take a step forward in his career, and DeMar DeRozan, even his three-point percentage declined throughout the season, he continued to take three-pointers. That opened up the offense. Kyle Lowry and DeRozan, though they were ISO'd too much, and that includes in these playoffs at times, at the end of games. Why don't the Raptors continue to play the way they've played all game at the end of games? Why are they ISOing 2 guys, which is never a good idea to begin with, but particularly when neither is quite good enough to get it done at this level, at the playoff level against other great teams or excellent teams with sometimes great players? They shouldn't. I don't think they will all the time. I already noticed some corrections there. They've gotten better at it. They had a tough first-round draw in the Wizards, the Raptors, and so they're still in a tough fight. Look, John Wall, when things are clicking, John Wall and Bradley Beal are on the team with more front-loaded talent than the Raptors. And when things are clicking and they play like a team, given that they have the best player on either team in John Wall, it's a tough matchup for the Raptors. But we will see in this series if it's the same old Raptors or if there's something new here. I believe there's something new here. I believe they're playing a better brand of basketball this year, Stephen A. I think that they're deeper than they've ever been. Their advantage in terms of their bench and the advantage it gives over their opponent's bench is huge. And I think DeRozan and Lowry and Dwayne Casey have learned enough through their experiences together that they will close Washington out. And I'm going to say they're going to do it in 6 games. And I think when push comes to shove, the Sixers aren't quite ready. Not quite. By next year, yes, but not quite yet.
Let me say this to you. First of all, I think the Sixers are going to take, I think that the Raptors will take the Wizards out in 7, not 6. And tonight is going to tell me a lot. If the Wizards win the night, for example, let's say, for example, lo and behold, the Wizards find a way to win the night's game in Toronto. Wizards are closing this out in Game 6. But they're not losing Game 6 in Washington, in my opinion. If the Wizards lose this series, they're going to lose both games in Toronto. They're not losing in the nation's capital in Chocolate City on Friday night. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I love Dwayne Casey. He is a phenomenal coach, one of the best coaches in basketball, as far as I'm concerned. But Game 4 was not a bright light for him. It was not his shining moment per se. He had Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan on the floor. There was no other shooter. Fred VanVleet was hurt, and we understand that, so he didn't play. But there was nobody else that was out there with DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. That is an impediment to Toronto's success. It harkens back to what derailed them in years past when those were the only 2 offensive weapons that you had on the floor. Because even though Serge Ibaka can score from time to time, he's not really an offensive force. He's a defensive presence and a shot blocker extraordinaire. With the other guys that you put out there, you've got long, athletic dudes that can defend, but they can't really score. So if you're to watch the Wizards or anybody else, if you're seeing Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan on that court, and those are the only 2 out there that are your offensive options, that's an impediment to Toronto's success. Dwayne Casey has to make sure he can't do that. If he did that against Philly, he'd have lost to them too. So again, these are the kind of reasons why I'm not sold on Toronto as of yet, because I think when all is said and done, that's a default position that I think he's very, very reluctant to stay away from.
There are reasons not to be sold on Toronto, especially it's not, playoff basketball is different than regular season basketball. There are no second of back-to-backs. There's more preparation for each team. So a well-oiled machine like Toronto that can roll through the regular season, a little more difficult in the playoffs if you don't have special players. You have referred to DeMar DeRozan as special. But when I say special, I mean a guy who really legitimately could be the best player in the league at some point soon, or among the very best players in the league. I don't think that's DeRozan. I don't think it'll ever be DeRozan. I do think it's Embiid and Simmons, so I admit my pick of Toronto is made more difficult by the way the Sixers are playing. Since you just spoke about Toronto, I need to speak about the Sixers for a second here. I don't know if people understand how special what they're witnessing is. The only comparable point guard center combination in the history of basketball who were on the team right around the same age, like in close drafts to one another, who have performed near this level are Penny and Shaq. I can't think of any others. That's how special Embiid and Simmons are. Stephen A., when you say, DeRozan, he's special. No, I disagree. DeRozan is excellent, but he is an all-star. There are lots of all-stars. Embiid and Simmons are different in a way DeRozan and Lowry will never be. In a way, most players in the NBA, even the All-Stars, will never be. And for them to win a playoff series as rookies, don't forget, Penny and Shaq got great really quick. They got to the finals in Shaq's third season, in Penny's second. But this is Simmons as a rookie. I know he's been in the league a year, but this is his rookie season. And Embiid really hasn't been healthy at this time of year until like right now. This is amazing what they're doing.
Well,
and you have to look not only at them and the coaching, but also the depth of this team. Stephen A., you mentioned Dwayne Wade's game last night. A lot of that was T.J. McConnell. Little 6'2" T.J. McConnell comes out and plays defense on Dwayne Wade and energizes the team with Simmons on the bench. I mean, this is a deep.
You're going on
team.
and on and on. I already made those points about the Philadelphia 76ers. I would tell you, you are sleeping
No, you
on
didn't,
it.
actually.
You are sleeping on your. Yes, I did. You're sleeping on your. I just don't feel the need to repeat it since I've done it about 15 times. But here's the deal.
What you just said
I
on
look
the
at
clock?
DeRozan. The bottom line is that DeRozan, you're ignoring your own team. You're ignoring how special DeRozan is. That's all I'm going to say about that.
How special is he? Hold on. How special is he? I like Toronto because they're a team.
How you going to ask me a question and then answer it?
That's a rhetorical question. If they can avoid falling into your trap of thinking DeRozan's special, go get him at the end of the game. Then Toronto will get out of the East. If they fall into your trap of thinking anyone's so special, just go get him. But particularly DeRozan, who is an all-star, but that's it. He's a 4-star player. He ain't a 5-star player. That's it. So I will ask you a legitimate question.
Now you're going to ask me. Is this a rhetorical one, or do I get to answer it actually?
I just prefaced it by saying you'll answer it.
Okay.
How special is DeRozan?
DeRozan is special, and here's what you're missing. Not only is he special, you brought up the fact that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are on another level. I'm here to tell you they will be. But at this particular moment in time, as gifted and as special as they are, and how we can see that the sky's the limit for them, that doesn't mean that as of right now, they are on the same level as DeMar DeRozan. Right now.
You think DeRozan's better than Embiid right now?
Right now? What do you mean better than? They play two different positions, but I think that he'll have.
Who's better? Who'd you rather have?
Well, right now, DeRozan in the postseason.
No, I'd rather have Embiid. And in fact, I like DeRozan a whole lot. I'd rather have Simmons right now than DeRozan.
All right, about that segue you guys made
I like
for
Toronto
me about 5
because
minutes
heard you.
ago.
But you got Toronto. Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I do, although Stephen A., it's one of these.
Pray for me, everyone.
Really?
Pray for
It's
me.
one of these.
I'm trying, Molly. I'm trying to move on.
A lot.
He keeps
Meanwhile,
going.
Dwayne Wade's 15th NBA season came to an end last night. We discussed him possibly retiring on the show yesterday, and after the game last night, he said he won't address his future in basketball just yet. Wade is now an unrestricted free agent. Max, where do Wade and the Heat go from here now?
The Heat have no real future, and neither does Dwayne Wade. Yesterday I said make him rip the uniform off you. It's a non-contact. It's not football or boxing. You're not going to wind up likely with head trauma or something like that, or shortening your life because you play more NBA basketball. And I was basing that a lot on Dwayne Wade's performance in several games in this playoffs. Stephen A. yesterday made the point that, you're resting in the playoffs. It's not like the grind of the regular season. But he can't even take the grind of the playoffs anymore. It's, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He was really given a problem, as I mentioned, by T.J. McConnell off the bench. His defense, 6'2", T.J. McConnell was causing problems for Dwayne Wade.
Because he was denying
when
the ball.
The Heat needed him the most. The Heat really needed Dwayne Wade to have a big game the most. He wanted to do it, but he simply couldn't deliver. And that tells me it is, in fact, time he should hang him up. Meantime, the Miami Heat, what's Pat Riley's MO been his entire career as a coach and executive? He waits for a signature star, preferably a big, and goes all in on him. When he jumped from the Lakers, it's understandable. He came up with the Lakers, Kareem and Magic. He went to the Knicks. It was because of Patrick Ewing. Never could find that signature star as a point guard to pair with Patrick Ewing. Mark Jackson early looked like he could be the guy. It didn't quite turn out that way when Pitino was there. He goes to Miami. It's Alonzo Mourning. He grabs Tim Hardaway. Later, it's Dwayne Wade. He grabs Shaquille O'Neal. And, of course, the big three, if you can get LeBron, forget about position, you grab him. I don't see that out there, barring a return to Miami by LeBron James. I don't see that available to the Heat right now. They have a terrible contract with Hassan Whiteside, who is sometimes a very good player, but usually a bad one, in fact. And they're limited in many ways. It looks to me like a tear-down rebuild, and I don't know if Pat Riley has that in him.
Well, I think Pat Riley has it in him. The question is whether or not the players do. I do think it's time for Dwayne Wade to retire. I've alluded to this the last couple of days. I think he will. I think he will retire. Did I speak to him last night? Yes. He hasn't talked about this. He wasn't going to talk about it anyway. Right now, he's going to talk about it with his family, sit down with his lovely wife and his mom and everybody else before making a decision. But he's clearly contemplating it, and I do think the time is it for him. He's got 15 years. He's been in 5 NBA Finals. He's won 3 NBA championships. He's been an NBA Finals MVP. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's nothing to prove. It's over. I think it should be over for him. I think that would be the right decision to make. As you look at Miami, overall, Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, they've got some decisions to make. I read a story about Hassan Whiteside, again, complaining, voicing his displeasure in the aftermath of losing this series. Hassan Whiteside was a disgrace in this series. It was just an absolute embarrassment. He is too big, too strong, too gifted on the defensive side of the ball to be as anemic of a presence as he was throughout this series. I had no problem with him not playing when Embiid was out for the first 2 games. But once Embiid was in there, I'm like, why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? And then you speak to folks that know a lot about him. They say he's got to want it. You know, you got to want to be out there, and you got to want to go for it. I'm watching Shaquille O'Neal on TNT the other night, literally freezing and being a basketball analyst and dissecting and picking apart moments in a game where Hassan Whiteside could sit up there, pivot, put his backside on somebody and demand the ball. He wouldn't do it. Going for a rebound, he wouldn't do it. Flashing into the lane to demand the ball, he wouldn't do it. And this is a problem because that's your high, that's your $93, $94 million man. If you're going to give money to a guy like that who picks and chooses when to put forth effort, then what kind of message does that send to the rest of the team? This is the question right now that Spoelstra and Pat Riley and Mickey Arison got to ask themselves. James Johnson, last night, wasn't a good performance for him. He's got to be more consistent. It's got to be better. Josh Richardson's got to develop a jump shot. I love his tenacity and how he defends and what have you. But he's got to develop a consistent jump shot. Ellington is somebody that should be capped. We get all of that. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. Boston is going to be better and fully loaded. Philly's going to be better and fully loaded. Washington is at least going to be respectable. So is Toronto. If you are the Miami Heat, the way you have to avoid being lost in the shuffle, you've got to find another scorer. And, oh, by the way, you got to find a big that you can rely upon. Kelly Olynyk can ball offensively. He was a good pickup for them, but he was a liability defensively. The problem is that they had to play him because they were getting nothing from Hassan Whiteside. And so you've got to figure out that big issue, and you've got to get another shooter. If you're the Miami Heat, and it would help if Goran Dragic learned to be a bit ambidextrous. He's a left-handed, one-armed dude. He can't do anything with his right. It would be nice to see him do something with his right hand and become a bit more ambidextrous. That's my evaluation of the Miami Heat. Period.
This is a league, again, where unless you are the Toronto Raptors, you have a guy like Ujiri who's putting together a team 10 deep that just plays exceptionally well on both sides of the ball and therefore doesn't need that signature star. And then even then, we'll see if I'm right and they get out of the East. Unless you're in a situation like that, you need special players. That's no one on the Heat. Dragic is not a special player. Listen, everyone in the NBA is special. It's an incredible thing to even make it to the league, let alone be a star. But he is at least an average starting point guard in the NBA, which is a very good player. It's like being an average starting quarterback in the NFL. It's very competitive. You're the best players there. And maybe even an above average starting point guard, which is a very, very good player. But he's not a great player. He's not one of the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 best players at his position. And certainly that's not Whiteside. You can't wish these guys into existence just because they're on your team. And I think, Stephen A., that's why Pat Riley went all in on Whiteside, and that was a mistake. In this league, you can look at guys like Whiteside, Andre Drummond, DeAndre Jordan, and I like DeAndre Jordan a lot, and you can squint and make yourself think that's going to be a special big. But in a league with Embiid and AD, and even though the way he's played in this series of Karl Anthony Towns and Porzingis and these kind of guys, those guys I just mentioned aren't good enough not to be the first or second best player in on your team if you have championship aspirations. And so when you look at the Heat, they don't really have anyone. They have a lot of decent pieces. They have a tough-minded organization, a good coach, good executives, solid players, but nothing special there. And Pat Riley's entire career is based around finding and getting special players. They are not on this team.
Yeah, but
it looks to me like a rebuild if he can't lure LeBron.
But you still missed my point. You talked about Hassan Whiteside from a talent perspective. I'm saying to you, if there were questions about this man's work ethic prior to you giving him the contract, then it's very anti-Pat Riley to give up those kind of dollars for a guy whose effort and commitment you questioned. And I think that is the thing that ultimately compromises you as a franchise. When somebody, it's one thing to be really good or really formidable. If you're a star, that's different because you throw out all the rules for the superstars. But if you're not a superstar, but you're above the pay grade per se, but effort is a huge question mark, you cannot give those kind of players money because that kind of stuff sifts down like a virus, and it ultimately affects your organization. I'm not getting on Hassan Whiteside the talent. I think defensively, he's incredibly formidable and worthy of his money. But when Shaq highlights, or any of us, our basketball analysts, or anybody watching the Miami Heat, are able to highlight numerous occasions, one time after another, where you're not even flashing into the lane with vigor, demanding the basketball and wanting to be a presence and making your presence felt. And you can't do that when you're 7-1, down low,
So
3
why
feet
did
from
Pat
the basket.
Riley,
that's a problem.
So why did Pat Riley give him the money? That's the point. I'm agreeing with you about that point. My explanation for why Pat Riley gave him the money is in his Pat Riley's DNA. He believes you need that great big Kareem, Patrick Ewing, Alonzo, Shaq, right? So he's looking at this guy. It's called wish casting. When the guy doesn't quite fit the description, but that's really what you need, you squint and convince yourself that it's in there somewhere. It was an enormous mistake in the case of Hassan Whiteside.
It's still an enormous mistake because of the players you mentioned. Patrick Ewing, his work, and he was just as renowned for his work ethic as he was for his play. Alonzo Mourning, do you know anything about the sacrifices that Alonzo Mourning did to himself and his body to be in pristine shape, to be who he was? This stuff matters. And for Hassan Whiteside to follow that legacy, knowing the big men that Pat Riley has coached, Kareem, Ewing, Alonzo, and then you come along and effort is a question, it's inexcusable. Inexcusable. That's my issue with Hassan Whiteside. I couldn't believe watching him and seeing how much he did not appear to want it.
How do you even trade him, too? How do you even trade him? They're married to him now. You can't move that contract.
Yeah, married on potential, clearly. So now Philly just sitting there waiting on the Celtics-Bucks series, Game 6, Thursday night. Gentlemen, the matchup is set. Warriors and Pelicans in the second round. Find out why you will not see Golden State playing much longer this season. Plus, Meek Mill is a free man and had Philly lit for the Sixers game last night. But do either of the fellas have a problem with Meek being there? Stay tuned for that conversation. And tomorrow, the 2018 NFL Draft begins, but we'll have the steal of the 2017 NFL Draft later in today's show. Saints star Alvin Kamara will join us. Don't go anywhere. First Take, just getting started.
Going to throw, and it's bobbled, but then caught by Kamara, and he goes into the end zone. He's the special man.